thought I recognised that voice. I didn't realise you're the commentator as well for Caracol and Blue Radio, and he basically does the commentary for everybody. But bad news! Just as we live, Brazil have taken the lead. Were you watching the game, by the way? I see you've got your top on. I'm in neutral white. So you haven't been watching it. Okay. You don't have a TV, do you?
I do not. But, national team matches I usually watch on the Caracol website.
Okay. You can listen as well on Blue Radio. I did watch the first half of my Panaderia. Typical Brazil, I think, shaded it on possession-wise. Colombia had our good friend Lucho Diaz had a decent chance, which just whizzed by the right-hand post. But, it was kind of 50-50 really first half, nothing too much. Brazil did hit the post. But I was kind of thinking, the draw specialist that Colombia have become over the last few games, I thought maybe they'll get another draw in Brazil. But they have a bit of work to do now. Usually when Brazil go a goal up, they're going to be hard to peg back, especially when they're at home. But we'll keep you up to date, guys. Anything else wild or exciting with you, Ollie, since we last spoke?
Not really. A friend is travelling through Bogotá on the way to Salvador, so he's with us overnight. So that's nice. And
does he want to join in the show?
No, he's got a 4 a.m. flight, so he's very much hunkering down for the night. Amazingly, I've got one dog has remained loyal. The other one has just immediately run off to be with the new person. Unbelievable.
Oh,
man's best friend, my ass.
Any opportunity. Well, maybe that says more about you than the dogs. I don't know. I'm only saying, Ollie, don't shoot the messenger. But anyway, your friend can keep it. Yeah, your friend can keep us up to date. Although I might hear shouts in this house if there is a goal from my neighbours, but we'll see. Anyway, guys, lots to get through today, and according to Colombia's defence minister, Diego Molano, Iran is an enemy of this state. Now, I've never been to Iran, but of those I know who have visited that country, they tell me it's home to exceptionally friendly people. So maybe in terms of competing for the title of friendliest in the world, Iran is an enemy of sorts of Colombia. But we reckon the country has greater belligerence to concern itself with. In terms of the unofficial state religion that we've just been talking about, football, Brazil is a constant and often controversial thorn in the side. Don't mention Neymar to many Colombians. And what about those heretics who scoff at the humble arepa and dare to put more than cheese into it? Blasphemous behaviour, that. On a somewhat deeper level, as a Colombian friend said to me about this, the greatest enemies of Colombia are the Colombians themselves. Are you Colombian and do you agree with that? Are you a foreigner living here and do you think the Colombians are the greatest enemies of this country? Well, let us know who or what you think are Colombia's greatest belligerents by using the live comment facility, and your messages will appear on screen. We'll take anything from the inane to the insightful, just like this show, really. If you are watching this recorded, you can still get involved by commenting on where you're viewing or via tweet, the handle being at Bogotá Post, everybody's favourite English language newspaper in this country, with the hashtag Bogotá Nights. Now, a more in-depth, if light-hearted take on enemies of the state is to come in the second half of the show. But first, it's our review of the week's main news stories. And it is with that foot-in-mouth moment from Defence Minister Diego Molano that we will start with. Ollie, what prompted Molano to come out with this "Iran is our enemy" statement? Well, why on earth would he say this?
I don't know. I'm not in his head, Brendan. It seems to me like... It is absolutely, it's the sort of thing you might say drunk at a party. It seems absolutely insane. Absolutely insane why you would sort of wander out and make this statement. It's clearly not backed by Duque or anybody else in the government. They're rowing frantically back on this as fast as they can. I doubt the United States are going to be happy with their allies taking this stance. And also, it's not really his job. He's not the foreign minister. He's not the president. He's not the head of state. There's no reason for him to be making this statement. Absolutely bizarre.
Now, you mentioned the US, that they wouldn't be happy with the Allies coming out with this. But would they not? Would they care, though, the United States? I mean, obviously, the United States and Iran are not exactly boozing buddies. But
yeah, but Biden looks like he wants to be building bridges with the Iranians. There's talk about restarting the nuclear talks that obviously were frozen a little bit when Trump came in. So, I doubt they want one of... And again, like I say, it's not even like it's Colombia saying this. It's just one of the ministers who's annoyingly high up enough that his words have some sort of currency to them, but also not in any way a proper spokesman. So, it's kind of the worst of all worlds.
But was he on the road with Duque? Obviously, Duque has been travelling since COP26 this day last week. We were talking about that, and he was in Glasgow, and he'd been travelling around. He was in France and all over. And I do believe he did make a stop over in the Middle East. So was Molano with him there, or did these comments come from Colombia?
Molano's still here, isn't he, I think?
Okay, yeah, well, that's what I'm not 100. I tried to actually get confirmation of that. If anybody knows, did he say them from here, from the safety of Colombia, or did he say them abroad? I know La Cancilleria, who's also the vice president, Marta Lucia Ramirez, she wasn't traveling with Duque, but she's in South Korea as we speak at this moment in time. But yeah, really bizarre. If we've less than a year of Duque, for some people that's good news, for others perhaps not so good news. But if this was early in the Duque administration, would Molano be getting being kind of shown the door? Would it be a resigning matter?
Yeah, there's just no point doing it now, is there? Would it be a resigning matter? Hard to say. He's not in the strongest of positions, full stop. I think this is kind of... Could it have been one of a straw to break the camel's back? Yeah, I could see that maybe. It would be unlikely to resign over solely this. But it's just a bizarre thing to... I mean, I think this more than anything else, just really weird.
Okay. Well, in fairness, when I posted this, when I was doing our preview of the show and encouraging comments, and we're already getting in a few comments from Jacob Toms and David Allen Simmons in terms of enemies of Colombia in another context, and we'll get our teeth into that in the second half of the show. So do send in your messages who you think are enemies, be it lighthearted or something more serious. But when I posted this, a guy did respond to kind of taking the serious element, explaining why he thought Iran would be an enemy of Colombia. He mentioned Venezuela. He mentioned something to do with Paraguay and money tied up there, Hezbollah attacks, Israel. There was a long list of different things as why Iran would be.
Colombia has always had very close ties with Israel, and you'd think that, obviously any friend of Israel is obviously not a friend of Iran. They hardly have... I always feel sorry, actually, for the Irish in the Olympics. That's got to be the worst position in the Olympics, surely, the Irish. Like going out sandwiched between Israel and Iran. I mean, that's not a fun place to be, is it?
We're used to being in awkward positions, Ollie, so we're well capable to hold the line.
But yeah, I mean, look, I can understand why. Look, geopolitically, I doubt Iran and Colombia care about one another. Does Iran drink a lot of Colombian coffee? Are they interested in Colombian roses? Does Iran export anything to Colombia? I can't think that there'd be any kind of link between them. Why make an enemy of them? It seems bizarre. Yeah,
exactly. By the way, we will mention a lot of that, what you mentioned in terms of maybe who has the better food or Colombia when we're talking about the real enemies of Colombia in the second half of the show. And you do remind me of a joke in the last World Cup when Colombia had qualified and Iran had also qualified, and obviously a play on Spanish here, it was Iran, and it had a picture of the Iranian football team qualified, and then it was no Iran, and I can't remember what big team didn't make it to to the World Cup. Was it the Dutch didn't make it to the last World Cup, but there was another kind of significant team, and everyone was surprised and some people happy that they didn't make it. I forget who it was, but that was the little joke man that was doing the rounds. Iran, they were going, and then no, Iran. You have to know your
Did Italy not qualify?
That might have been it. Italy, exactly. I think that was it. Okay, well, mentioning football,
I'm just going to quickly pull you up on one thing there, Brendan. You said David Allen Simmons and Jacob Toms commenting on the whole enemies of Colombia thing. David is, and we'll get back to that later, I'm sure. Jacob, I mean, I think we'd all love to hear who you think is an enemy of Colombia. We're really looking to get comments coming in.
Yeah, exactly. Do send them in. And by the way, if you're listening to us and you're kind of going, we want to watch the match or whatever as well, we are keeping it still 1-0 to Brazil with just 5 minutes of normal time to go. And there's another game that just kicked off at 9 o'clock, same time as the show. Peru have gone 1-0 up on Bolivia, which will kind of be important. I know we're going to get into sport in bigger detail, but maybe while I'm mentioning it, maybe we should kind of put it second in our running order, considering the game is in running. You kind of expect that the best that Colombia were going to do was to get a point out of Brazil today. So if they do manage to get a late equaliser, it's something. But you kind of go, well, 0 points.
I'd say, well, hang on, whoa. Yeah, I'd say if they get a late equaliser, I'd say that's a good result.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. If I phrase that incorrectly, I mean, like if they did get 1 point there, you'd be going excellent. So you're kind of putting that down as 0 points. Paraguay, who lost to Chile tonight, they're really going to need to get something out of the game in Barranquilla on Tuesday night. But again, you'd be hoping Colombia will get out of this rut where they can't win a game. Okay, they're not losing, bar tonight. But they just can't seem to buy a win in the games that you would expect, perhaps, that they'd win. Because then it will start getting awkward. If they don't get 3 points against Paraguay...
Let's see where we are next week. Yeah, let's see where we are next week. Let's
get into all of that. Okay. Ollie, have you noticed, by the way, and this was kind of in the news headlines between Caracol and RSN this week, of the global supply chain affecting Colombia. Have you noticed any shortages in your daily trips to the shop or whatever they are, your weekly trips to the shop? Anything?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything missing on the shelves, I have to say. I think it's been pretty much the same, but it hasn't been easy to get the coffee that I like recently. Could say that. And also my local bread maker's shop, not a bakery, but a place to buy bread making things and cake making things. They haven't had big packets of yeast for about a month now. Maybe it's coincidence.
I noticed in Justo y Bueno de Una, the discount stores here are kind of versions of Aldi and Lidl, for those of you from Europe or UK side of things. There's been certain things missing there, like orange juice and different things in the refrigerator section. Now, again, I don't know if that's down to being hit, maybe that there are kind of plastics and packaging that they're not getting in, so there are shortages in that. I mean, obviously this is something that's going to affect the whole world, so you'd imagine there will be some sort of a knock-on effect here. But you made the point when we were doing our little planning for this show that a lot of shops here in Colombia, that they're not, what's the term they use? That it's not like right up to the last minute kind of stuff. What's that?
Oh, it's not just in time.
Just in time, yeah, exactly. That they would have decent supplies there to last for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, actually, since I said that, I'm wondering. I find a lot of places keep an enormous amount of stock. They don't turn things over as quickly as they would, say, in England. In some places, but in other places, that's really not true. They really do just buy in kind of, one wheel of cheese at a time. So, yeah, okay. I don't know.
Okay. By the way, Jacob Toms has responded to your your call there, to your plea, Ollie, and we'll get into these. When we get in, but just one point on bread.
Very, very, very quickly answer Jacob Tom's. I'm not making sourdough, but I am thinking about getting into it. I made naan breads today. That was a fun thing. Anyway.
Well, one thing about bread, because obviously panaderias are 10 a penny here, and I'm well frequented with many of them, but there is a saying among some Colombians, we're more rice than wheat here, but of course bread shops everywhere. And talking about supply chain, again, I don't know if this is related, but I've noticed in a few of my panaderias, they had a sign up in the last week that they've had to put the standard, what used to be pan de 200, 200 pesos. It was 300, and now it's 400, because they're saying the cost of wheat and the other things that they have to do to make the bread. Yeah, so I guess in the space of about 2.5 to 3 years, that's doubled in price in many panaderias, your standard pan de 200. So we've talked before how beer and things that actually go on.
Wheat's been expensive for quite a while, though, hasn't it, worldwide?
Again, I don't know. That'd be over my head.
And Angela here is, our old friend Angela out in Boyacá is saying here that there's shortages of building materials, according to her, mainly bathroom tiles.
I'll have to ask my barrio buddies. They're all involved in construction. And of course, that will push up prices as well, if that is the case. I guess it's kind of a watching brief, and we'll see what happens. One thing I have noticed too, again, not sure what this means, the litre bottles of poker. Yes, it always goes back to poker. But they've been in short supply in a lot of the tiendas around here as well. Again, is that just coincidental? I'm not sure. Somebody said they're doing that, Bavaria, and then there's going to be a price hike. Which, to come back to the point I was going to make, yes, bread has gone up. You can say doubled in price in the last 2.5, 3 years. But beer generally has held its price over the whole 10 years that I've been here. Yeah, exactly. And even it could be argued it's cheaper than it was 10 years ago, because you've got the bigger presentation sizes. But anyway, I must check that out, Angela. And when you said our old friend Angela, of course, old as in long-standing for a long time. Still very young, Angela, in age. Ollie, we had an opinion poll, and I guess there's no big surprise with this. 70% of Colombians, apparently, of the electorate still don't know who they will vote for in next year's presidential election, considering we don't have anything close to a short list of candidates. Okay, there's one who we can definitely put down there, Gustavo Petro. Fajardo, I guess, as well, is definitely going to be there on the list, you would think. But that is, I guess that didn't surprise you, did it? That 70% don't know who they're going to vote for?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's one enormous elephant in the room, isn't there? I mean, for a start.
Yes.
Until the Centro
Democratic... And will that be a female or a male elephant?
Well, let's not call her an elephant for now.
Okay.
Elephants are beautiful and sweet and gentle creatures.
They never forget.
No, whereas she does forget things like the Bananero massacre. But look, yeah, okay, we're talking about Cabal. I suppose she'd be a horse, maybe a stalking horse. Caballo, the stalking horse. Yeah, look, she's an odd choice. If the Centro Democrático go with her, that's going to really affect... I can see a lot of floating voters in Colombia thinking, I might vote for the Centro Democrático, let's see who they put forward. I don't think Cabal is a person who will win you votes. Put simply.
Yeah,
however, I can see her winning in a second round against Petro if she gets to it.
Okay. But, just... kind of keeping a casual eye on her comments and things she has said over the last few years, you'd be kind of thinking it'd be a bit of a wild selection for a party that was expecting to win next year. Well, we'll be hoping to win next year's election and a successor to Duque. We kind of equated her to Sarah Palin from Alaska. Really, she's that kind of character.
Yeah. She's not a Trump. She's not, she's not that sort of character. She's not even she's sort of like a reverse Corbyn for anybody who's into British politics. She's a darling of the party. She's the embodiment of the very extreme end of the party, the ones that really are fixed, stuck right in the party. She's kind of an embodiment of them. And of course, that's just never going to win in centrist voters. Never.
Yeah. Again, though, as you said, if it came to a shootout between Kowal and Petro, then...
That's interesting. I genuinely, I don't know what way that would go. I really don't. Okay. And look, there's so much to... even if people did say I definitely know who I'm voting for, I wouldn't trust them really at this point. Colombia doesn't have big, strong parties where people vote for the same party even if they put up a talking goat every year. It's not like that. People vote really for an individual, which I don't actually think is a bad thing. And I think what you've got to think about here is anything could happen in the next, whatever it is, 7-9 months. And when I say anything could happen, look, there are things we know might happen. What if there's particularly bad flooding in this rainy season? What happens if the price of oil shoots up even further or comes down again? What happens if the supply chain crisis gets worse and exports suffer? What happens if the dollar starts falling or rising? What happens if we have protests again? We just don't know. Anybody who tells you they've got an idea of where the election is going in any serious way before March, I think is probably deluding themselves.
Yeah, we're certainly at the early stages of it, and there's a lot to be sorted out before it kind of really gets interesting, I guess. But it's still interesting at this moment in time where we're kind of sorting out the chaff from the wheat, to speak of bread products and things like that. And just to mention, Angela is saying how most flours are imported, it seems, these days, because in Boyacá there's a lot of abandoned mills, and while she says the price is not increased there in Boyacá, but the bread, the presentations are smaller. I've noticed that as well. The price increases, and also the size is smaller. But David Allen Sims, an interesting point about not being a labour shortage here. Caracol were running with a news item today that Barranquilla is the only city in Colombia that has single digits unemployment at the moment, and apparently things are booming in Barranquilla. So, Ollie, would you think of maybe I know now you've invested in that part of Bogotá. We're going to say, would give you another word.
You're the second person to ask me this question today. There is no way I could live in Barranquilla. Maybe.
No,
I could maybe do a couple of months. Yeah, I've been to Barranquilla.
I've only passed through it. I've never stayed there. So, I don't know. Could I? I don't know. I don't think I could live on the Caribbean coast. Full stop. To visit, as you say, or spend a few weeks, but live.
I could do Santa Marta. I think that would be quite fun. But no, I think Barranquilla would just drive me insane. I think.
Yeah. I'd love to go for a game, mentioning that, and I think it's finished.
I would go for a national team game. I've been to the national stadium, but there must have been a crowd of about 6,000. I mean, that would be generous. I mean, possibly 2,000. Junior versus, I don't even remember, Jaguares or somebody. And my gosh, Brendan, it was just, I mean, when I say empty, I really, the nearest people to us would have been about 2 minutes walk away.
Social distancing. Good stuff. The stadiums of the future, Ollie. Keep a good 200 meters between spectators. Well, it has finished, by the way, mentioning football. So Brazil have beaten Colombia. So on to Tuesday night in Barranquilla, Colombia against Paraguay. We'll see, can they finally get a win after they haven't won a game in about 3 or 4. But anyway, we shall see. By the way, David Allen Simmons on about voter apathy. Yeah, well, turnout here is usually pathetically low. It will be interesting to see, will this election generated a little bit more interest? You know, we had these massive protests. No. Okay.
I don't see any reason. Look, I think David, when David Allen Simmons says general voting apathy, what he means is just there's nothing to get excited about. No one cares. They're all crooks. And even though in Colombia you actually do have an option to say they're all crooks, tell the man jack of them to bugger off and put in a new bunch, you actually do have that option on the ballot paper, but no one, despite a lot of people saying that that's exactly what they want, they still don't bother voting for that. So the answer is Colombia, does Colombia want democracy?
I do remember a few years ago writing a tongue-in-cheek article about voting for Mr. V.E. Blanco, voto in blanco. What we like a blank vote or a white vote. What we call it, the translation in English. But yeah, like it is an option, as you say. If that gets over a certain percentage, or is it if it wins the first round, then you have to...
It needs to win the first round outright.
Okay. Yeah.
Which I think I'm correct in saying that no Colombian president has done that since Uribe 1, possibly Uribe 2.
Okay. But again, that kind of does bring us on. But before we get on to like who are the real enemies of this country, and the politicians being the obvious one that many like to mention. Before we do that, though, there was one little sporting thing I wanted to mention, which I always find strange when you've got La Selección de Colombia playing, but
at the same
time, the league and the cup, here still goes on, and we had the final, the first leg of the Copa Colombia, so like the FA Cup of Colombia, Nacional against Pereira. Did you see the result of this?
I did not. What was the result?
Well, Nacional at home, so the second leg will take place in Pereira. 5-0 to Nacional, so I think we can jot that one down. One hand on the trophy for Nacional.
Score once and Pereira. Oh no, they don't usually use away goals here, do they?
No, but I mean,
5-0.
Nacional aren't going to throw away a lead like that. Anyway, Ollie, enemies of Colombia. Will we start with it? Well, we've already talked about Iran at the top of the show. If people are just joining us, of course, the defense minister this week an amount of controversy by saying that Iran was an enemy of Colombia. Of course, as we mentioned at the top, and if you're watching this recorded, you can go back, but briefly to say that, well, why on earth would you just say Iran is an enemy? There might be some valid reasons, but why come out and say it when there was no need at all, no provocation? But Iran, if we were to just use that as a starting point, and we'll get to the comments as they're coming in, and those who've already sent in who they believe are the biggest enemies of this state. I've spoken to a few people who have visited Iran, and there was one man who visited every country, United Nations country on the planet, and he rated the Iranians as the friendliest. Now, Colombians like to say that they are very welcoming and the friendliest, so I guess they might compete for that title. You've never been to Iran, though, Ollie,
no.
Have you?
I did used to live with an Iranian.
Okay.
I mean, I say lived with an Iranian. He was born in Luton, but his family were Iranian. And to be fair, if I was born in Luton, I'd pretty much choose any country on earth that I could.
I don't know. There goes our Luton audience. All one of them, and anyone from Luton.
They don't know how to turn on a television. Anyway, but Facebook requires typing in numbers. If you're from Luton, you can barely use your fingers. Anyway, I'm not sure they have opposable thumbs, to be honest. Anyway, sorry, no, we're way off top. Yasin's. I'm being very unfair to Yasin. Yasin's parents had only been in England for about a year, I think, when they had him. His brother was born. His brother's only 2 years older. He was born in Iran. And actually, I had the great pleasure of watching Iran lose to Ireland in Dublin. football.
Oh yeah, in a World Cup qualifier. Speaking of, lots of football links here tonight. But yeah, remember that? That was the last time the Republic of Ireland made it to a World Cup. The playoff for the 2002 World Cup. So I think it was at the end of 2001. What was it? Yeah. But yeah, so Iranians in terms of, I don't know, I know one Irishman who was in both countries, and he just said yes, Iranians are exceptionally friendly to the point that it's nearly too much. They kind of wouldn't leave you alone. They're kind of like you're sitting on a park bench on your own, and they come up and go, "What are you doing, sitting on a park bench on your own? Like, here, come for a cup of tea."
You must be lonely, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
But let's have a look. What does Iran have against Colombia, or vice versa? So, being strict Muslims, they're not going to like dancing. That's pretty anti-Colombian.
That's 1 point for me there. That why I should go to Iran. So
they love eating lamb, and Colombians only eat lamb in certain parts of Colombia. So I guess that's maybe a balance.
Santander, I guess in parts of Boyacá as well they would, like the more mountainous areas. Mm-hmm. I do like lamb as well, I have to say. Good roast lamb, can't beat it.
I'm a massive fan of Iranian food, massive fan. They like rice, They both like rice.
Okay. Now, Ollie, on the whole, would you say Iranian food is a little bit more flavoursome than Colombian food?
Of course. We've been down this path before, Brendan. We've been down this path so many times.
I just wanted to make sure, maybe you had a Damascene conversion or something in the last few months, and you've reappraised the wonders of the Colombian arepa and things like that. But anyway. Yeah, so anything else there then the reasons why they might be similar or not? Yeah, can't really.
Terrorists?
Well, yeah, of course.
Apart from that, I can't think of many reasons. They seem to have... They're very different countries, aren't they?
Well, look, let's call a spade, and we've talked about this before here. The treatment of women traditionally, and even to this day in this country, can be seen as, women seen as second class in many areas, misogynistic. Yeah. So we could say there's kind of some similarities in that regard.
I'd imagine
the Iranian desserts. Sorry, I was going to say desserts beat theirs.
Yeah, and probably the deserts as well.
Desert. Yeah, well. Desserts and deserts. Yes, both.
But I'd say it's interesting that you say, about calling a spade a spade. The Iranians famously love a public execution. I'm not sure that capital punishment is unpopular in Colombia. I think if a politician put it forward as a campaign manifesto, I think they'd do quite well.
Perhaps in the provinces, I wouldn't say like there'd be a lot of people aghast with it. I think here in a more cosmopolitan, liberal Bogotá, less so. David Allen Simmons, of course, mentions, as you mentioned, the Islam versus Catholicism. I feel I can say, but growing up as a Catholic,
Christians and Muslims fighting sounds far-fetched.
No, it would never happen. Brothers in arms. But I was just going to say there's similarities perhaps in those religions as well in some ways. But anyway, I'll get myself into trouble, so I'll move swiftly on. I'm sure I wrote about it before. I'd say that growing up as a Catholic, being indoctrinated into the Catholic religion. But okay, well that's Iran and Colombia. But let's be honest, Iran is not the biggest enemy of Colombia. So we were mentioning at the start, and we've mentioned kind of food here. Like, if a foreigner comes here and is asked their opinion on a number of things, one of them will start with the food, I guess, and a arepa, and you kind of go, so it's okay. Wouldn't be my go-to thing. That might upset a lot of Colombians.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
These the arepa bunch of sensei. Go on.
But there's also arepa paisas. And arepa paisas are, I mean, honestly, Brendan, I'll be honest, you know, I was looking for a doorstop. I couldn't find anything to go underneath the thing. They're great coasters. You know, you want somewhere to put your tea down or your coffee. They really do the job.
You could probably play frisbee with them as well. It wouldn't be too bad at that.
Yeah, they're good for throwing. Yeah, the dogs won't accidentally eat them.
Now, I have to say, I remember, can I just say this? I was in Finlandia a number of years back in the Eje Cafetero, and I call that arepa town. And obviously, you know, I'm not kind of, you know, I'm a bit of a Philistine when it comes to these things anyway. I'll eat anything, not exactly high culture or whatever, but in terms of cuisine that I demand certain standards. But I enjoyed it. You go around, nearly every second house were selling their own little arepas. So this was maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I think like you could buy them for 100 pesos, 200 pesos, just butter, salt. In the odd place, you might get a bit of cheese if you were lucky. But it was just butter, salt. Like in the morning, practically every second house was selling arepas outside the door in Finlandia. I just thought it was amazing. So you can imagine what I was eating back then. Loads of arepas. But yeah, like we've talked about this before, whisper it, but there is a neighbouring country that has discovered that if you...
Brendan.
Well...
the migration will be at your door.
Yeah, I should be careful. I have to apply for a visa. My visa expires in 2 weeks. But that's why I said I love the arepas, but sometimes if you put things inside them, like make them like a hamburger or whatever, or even a veggie burger or a vegan burger, whatever you want, but it's the fillings that make the arepa.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, I fully agree. I didn't get the fuss over arepas. I thought this is just a slightly unpleasant food and I can't understand why people are eating it. Then I got to Venezuela. They gave me an arepa with stuff inside it, and I went, well, this makes sense. I mean, it's a pretty established thing, isn't it? You've got a carbohydrate, you put a nice tasty thing inside the carbohydrate. It could be a jacket potato, it could be a sandwich, it could be a burrito. You've got lots of different options, but the basic idea of carbohydrate on the outside, nice sort of tasty filling on the inside, it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
Why would you not do that?
Now,
it's bizarre.
Sticking with food, Angela did mention the desserts. And I have to say, again, big surprise, I'm a panaderia man. You go in and I don't eat sweet things these days, but back in the day, like you'd see these lovely looking chocolate cake, you know, and you're going, oh, this looks delicious, I'll buy this. And then you put it in your mouth and like it instantly takes all the saliva. It's so dry. You're like, what the heck? It like just so. I don't know. Why can't they have? Obviously, I'm not a baker, but like to make it a little bit more moist. I don't know. These things are so dry.
Is it? I mean, my only real question is why is a grown man eating cake?
But I didn't say. I said back in the day when I was, you know, younger, more impressionable. Okay. Yes. Well, I was never a child here, but well, some people say I still am a child here. But yeah, like so the desserts. Although I do like tres leches. I mean, I certainly would have no issue with that. And the milhojas are tasty with arequipe. So yeah, that's not bad. So desserts wise, now just to go back to some of our earlier comments. Jacob Thomas mentioned, because another thing that you get here, you know, talking of, are you an enemy of Colombia? Somebody goes, it's the most beautiful country in the world, isn't it? And you kind of go, well, yeah, it's beautiful. But Jacob Thomas mentions the litter. And yeah, like that's one thing. If you're so proud of your country and you like it, then why do you not care about the litter? And I just see so many people.
Do you remember litter when you were young in Ireland? We used to have litter in England when I was young. And it really went away. I mean, it would have been in the 90s. I don't think I ever really noticed it, but it just suddenly there wasn't really any litter anymore. And, we used to sort of play with crisp packets and throw them up into the air when I was little. And then there became a point where you never saw them. People just put stuff in bins all the time. And, I mean, look, littering is one of the things that perpetually irritates me. There's no excuse for it in Bogota, none whatsoever. There are, thanks to corrupt politicians whose, family members have been installment businesses, there are at least 5 times as many bins in Bogota as the city needs. Just wait until you get there, put it in.
Yeah. Interesting, you mentioned the litter back in the day. I remember coming back from a football match when we were in primary school, and we were driven in a car with the mother of one of the other footballers, one of my friends in class, and there's like 5 of us packed into the car, 5 or 6, we were like 10 or 11 years of age. But one of the guys throws a crisp packet out the window, and the mother stopped the car, reversed it to get out and pick that up. Can you imagine Colombian? I mean, I'm generalizing here. I'm sure there are some Colombian parents who are very strict on it, but not a lot. I mean, I do walk down the street and I just see people.
Yeah, I've been to. Yeah, absolutely. It's just. To be honest, I've never really seen people doing it. I've just seen the effects of it, so they must be doing it. But, look, I go walking regularly in the Parque Nacional. There's litter all the way through it. You're constantly coming across plastic residue. I've been to places like, for example, the Ciudad de Rocas, I think it's called. Anyway, out in Guaviare. I mean, that's really in the middle of nowhere, Why would you take 3 liters of Coca-Cola there in the first place? And then why would you just abandon it there? It's so lazy and it's so irritating. And you do think, well, and this is, I think, where Jacob Thomas makes a really good point. You must really just not care about the place you live in. So, I've seen it now. I don't care if it looks bad for the next person, because that's not me, is it? So fuck it.
Okay, can I play devil's advocate here for a second? But
it's unlike you.
Is litter? But is it more like a first world problem in some ways? Is that when you're a developing country, low income, middle income nation, or whatever, you've got so many other concerns or whatever. You're kind of going, well, why do I care that much about litter? It'll all just go back into the earth in some way. And obviously the disposable world that we live in now is relatively new. Might talk to my dad who's 78, and even younger generations than him. They'd go to the local store and they'd have their own container to pick up the eggs and all that kind of stuff. So you weren't getting plastic bags and plastic containers for everything. So the whole So it's new. So go on.
Yeah. It's always irritating to me. And we go, how would we live without plastic? But it's in living memory. Plastics weren't widespread when our parents were alive.
Yeah, laziness and convenience, exactly. So David had mentioned as well there, it's training and PR and getting.
No, but he's missed the point. This is what Colombians do all the time. They go, lo que necesitamos es más educación. And you go, no, it's not. You don't need more education. What you need to do is start fining people for throwing litter. You need to start making. What stopped it in England was high-profile cases in the newspapers where people go, oh well, this woman just threw an apple core onto the park and she's been fined £100 and it's so terribly unfair. And everybody else thinks, I'm not going to throw apple core around. Don't want to lose £100.
But this comes back to my point now, because you're in a country where, and I know you have to start somewhere, and it's kind of every little helps, to use the Tesco supermarket motto slogan. But when you're in where there are bigger problems to deal with, people are kind of going off the police and authorities are going, well, why are we going to fine over litter? Because there's so many other big issues. But you could take the broken windows approach as well, theory of, just deal with everything, no matter how small it is, and you might get it going. Now, mentioning that brings me on to kind of that indifference, because I was talking to my only student at the moment, who's actually a Brazilian, but she's married to a Colombian, and they lived in the United States, and they had a daughter in the United States who's still quite young, and then they came back here recently. But she was just saying how in the United States, her husband would strap in the kid into the child seat and do everything as they were meant to do. Here, he doesn't do that. He doesn't matter. Just lets the child kind of roam around in the car or whatever. So much so that when the child is in the car with him here, she'll start crying if she has to go into the seat. If it's just with the mother, she'll do it because the mother insists that. But it's the difference. So my point is that Colombians will behave differently when they have to, in a country where the law says you have to do it. But here it's kind of like, doesn't matter. Yeah, we'll play by our own rules. Which brings me on to the statement. So again, this whole idea of who are the enemies and what are the biggest enemies of this state. The old saying, Ollie, well, it might work in Dinamarca, but it doesn't work in Cundinamarca.
There's no in many cases. I mean, there's some things where that's, there's a lot of things that Denmark, has the opportunity. But yeah, littering's a really good example of this. You don't have to be a rich country to not litter. You just have to not drop litter on the. It's a really simple thing to do. It's really, really easy. You just have to not do something. It's easier not to litter than it is to litter in many ways. And people come out with these ridiculous statements. They say, "But what am I going to do? Carry around a crisp packet for 5 minutes?" Yes, that's what you're going to do. It's not that hard. And also just this other thing of you could not eat those crisps. So I doubt that's your primary consumption. What would happen if we all just ate crisps? Anyway, look.
Okay. I was gonna.
But let's come back, because this is what a friend of the show, Richard Stoller, on Facebook earlier. This is what he said. I was about to get to it. Yeah. Go on. No, go ahead.
Oh, no, well, okay, well, there's two comments he made. Well, number one was that, and we've mentioned this in our notes, that perhaps the biggest enemy of this country, because what they could do if they actually cared, could transform the country, or certainly help, financially wise, but the rich and powerful Colombians, who don't really care. Yes. They live in a bubble that's like an independent republic or whatever, that's not Colombia. They don't contribute to the state proportionally anyway, hardly anything. They spend their leisure time in the United States or elsewhere, particularly Florida, probably. And in terms of taxes, everything goes into private institutes that are kind of like these. They're like little independent republics inside what is the Republic of Colombia, and they do very little for the state, for the masses who they could help, and they're indifferent to them. They really, I guess, don't care about their fellow Colombians. Would you agree, Ollie?
Oh, I do. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I wonder. I'll push that point a little bit further. I'd say it's not always just the rich and the wealthy, but how many people care? Again, we talked about this later. How many people care about the people outside their family and maybe their friends? How many people care about the stranger on the streets? And I don't want to be too negative here. I think generally that if you had a heart attack walking down a Bogotá street, I think people would stop and help you. But there's also too many of those instances where you see somebody, today, for example, walking up the Septima, and a bus was trying to turn and go up the Calle 45, and it couldn't turn and go up because somebody had just stopped their car, in the way of the bus's turning circle. And so the bus beeps, and the guy's like, "What do you want me to do?" And you just thought, to me, there's something quite special about that kind of particularly boneheaded, sort of pig-headed stubbornness to just go, "No, I could make life easier for other people, but they're not me, so what do I care?" and just absolutely remarkable. I mean, and again, it's something I see, more often than I would like to, frankly.
You just brought something to my mind that happened here the week before last. I was at a pedestrian crossing and the light was green for me. And there's like a junction between where the cars on the. So I was crossing from the left hand side over to the right or whatever. So like I crossed it where the traffic was nearest to me, and then the cars were like one junction away on the other side as I was crossing. And one taxi just decided, okay, there's nothing coming there. I'm going to go about my business, even though the light was green for me. And he got there, and then he saw that I was walking, and he stopped, and he's like waving me on. And I'm going, well, obviously, you idiot, the light is green for me. You were the one who's jumped through the light. But it was as if he was doing me a favor. It's like he expected me to go over and shake his hand. So, yeah, that kind of, well, we have an Irish expression for it, May Feiner, like, me, myself, and I, but as you said, maybe me, myself, and my family. Now, obviously, again, generalizing here, but maybe that lack of community spirit is a problem here, and it's kind of self-perpetuating, because then it's just, oh well, nothing's going to change, so I'll just look after my own little niche here, to heck with the rest, and that ties in again with the voter apathy and all this kind of stuff. It'll never change, guys. It's just the way it is, and nothing will change if that's the attitude thing, I guess.
But don't forget. Politicians elected in Colombia, it's not like it's a country with, open democracy where you can choose whichever candidate you want. Oh no, wait, it is. But for some reason, let's all blame the politicians that nobody ever seems to have voted for. It's very strange.
No, but you made it. Go on.
I mean, David Allen Simmons makes a good point here. I mean, the state is often, we can say outwardly anti-Colombian. I think the Colombian state does seem to spend quite a lot of energy attacking other Colombians.
Yeah, now, I'll say something very controversial here, but I think you semi-agree with me, but like Álvaro Uribe as a populist. Now, obviously, for a certain sector, and there were certain Colombians that he very much tried and succeeded in some ways of exterminating, or at least eliminating to the sidelines. But in his heart of heart, his vision of Colombia, you could say, the argument can be made that he wanted to improve Colombia. You made a point when we were doing almost all of the anti-Uribistas that I've met, almost all of them, I would say, would concede that they think that he thinks that he's doing the right thing. Most of them don't think he's cynical. Ivan Duque, I think, is very different. I don't think they're particularly similar, to be honest, apart from having, a similar political worldview and a similar, and being from the same party. But I don't think I don't see them as being alike at all. I think Duque really is cynical. I think he comes from a rich family. He wanted to be president, so he got to be president. But I don't think he cares about Colombia. I don't think it bothers him if, the average Colombian has a better or worse life. I just don't think it enters into his head at any moment. Uribe, I think, genuinely does want Colombia to be better. He just has a radically different vision of what a better Colombia would be. Yeah, okay. Well, Andres Mateo Lozano Guzman has popped up there with a comment. Both are criminals. In his view, of course. Won't libel anybody here. Although we did mention, we didn't mention this, and I meant to mention it in the news. Of course, Uribe is now going to be back in criminal court because the Constitutional Court has said that this kind of protection that he had didn't apply or whatever from following Colombian law exactly. But he will have to face charges in a criminal court. Now, I got a change.org email the other day with two petitions. One was Uribe should retire from political life and forget about it. Now, he said he's not going to run for the Senate the next time, but then the other petition was, no, Uribe should continue because he is Colombia, in effect. Which one would you sign, Ollie? Neither.
I'd want him to run, of course.
Oh, okay.
Look. It comes down whether or not you like Uribe. That's not really the point. Democracy isn't about just choosing who you like. It's about choosing who we all like. I would like Uribe to not be voted in. I would like enough people to reject him at the polls. That's where I would like him to be defeated. I wouldn't want him to be defeated. It's a bit like saying, I want the politician who I hate just to die. Well, then you haven't defeated their argument. You've just, they've run out of physical existence.
Yeah.
I think also there's no closure. If Uribe chooses on his terms to bugger off and leave Colombian politics behind, I don't think that provides, as Andres says here, I don't think that provides closure. I think Colombia needs the closure of actually rejecting him. In the same way that, for example, in Chile, you had that vote that said, nope, we want to move away from military dictatorship and towards progressive representative democracy.
Okay. But I mean, what age is Uribe? Is it late 60s? Is he 70 yet?
Early
younger than
60s.
Early 60s, yeah, so he's not terribly old.
Oh, no, yeah, mid-60s.
But anyway, I think with this latest development, he probably won't be able to run anyway for the Senate. But he's announced that he's not going to run. But of course, if he's still kind of the godfather of the Centro Democrático and the figurehead there, I guess then by proxy, people will have a chance to vote for him or not, like whoever the Uribe candidate is in next year's election. But mentioning, of course, Uribe, a paisa from Medellin, paisas are sometimes seen as enemies of Gran Colombia, if I can use that term, of La República de Colombia, because they could be independent, Ollie, and they'd be better off. Yes or no?
Yeah, what would they'd export everything out of Turbo, would they? I mean, is there a deep sea port in Turbo?
Maybe they could manufacture one. They are the industrious types. They'd come up with a solution, no doubt. But then, of course, if you live in other parts of Colombia, Bogotá is probably the enemy of Colombia. Everything's centralized.
But it absolutely is, isn't it? I mean, it sucks in all the resources. It keeps everything for itself. It's run by a privileged liberal elite. I mean, yeah, Donald Trump would absolutely make hay if he was, if he was down here.
Yeah. I'm just looking at it, checking. Nothing. Oh, well, one thing I didn't mention in our notes, to kind of end on a more kind of trivial note, but beautiful women, Nolly. Like, again, I'm in a tienda and somebody goes, oh, why are you in Colombia? Is it for our beautiful women? Because we've got the most beautiful women in the world. Well, there are beautiful women here. I'm not sure how you judge how, obviously beauty is skin deep, blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. Who says who are the most beautiful? I guess if you go by Miss Worlds and all that kind of stuff, although I tend to find a lot of those beauty pageants and Miss Worlds, Miss Universe, a lot of the women who win them are kind of androgynous. It wouldn't always be my definition of what beautiful is. But I think there is a scientific formula for what beautiful is. Remember that was in the story a couple of years ago.
Yeah, objective beauty, yeah. But I always find it interesting how there are quite a lot of people I know who are sort of liberal academic feminists, yet still trot out that line. Again, we talk about sort of self-sabotaging and being your own worst enemy at times. And again, yeah, I've heard that so many times, that lazy thing.
Yeah, now here we go. We get two kind of contrasting, well, not really contrasting, but as David Allenton says, the women here are a treasure. They are indeed, in some ways. And Andres Mateo Lozano Guzman says beauty is, subjective. Well, certainly is. Anyway, guys, I think we're done. We could probably talk for another half an hour. There's a lot in that.
we officially have the message. We are officially
Yeah, no,
done.
that's what I mean. I don't want to. I said we could, in theory. Anyway, next week we'll know how Colombia will have performed in Barranquilla against Paraguay. 3 points would be nice to put them on the road to Qatar, but let's see. But not to Iran. Anyway, guys, until next week, ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.